Hello, everyone, and welcome to Theory into Practice. I am Dan Scott, and today we're going to talk to someone who is going through their emergency management journey, and they've done so in the hospital setting, and they have a little bit of a more unique background. But more than that, the pursuit that's being undergone to become a great emergency manager and understand emergency management in its most extreme facets and knowing how to apply it in what they do. I'm going to invite her on to explain a little bit more about that, give us a background who she are. But today we are going to be talking to Elizabeth Weeks. Elizabeth, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Dan. How are you?
I am doing very well this morning. Thank you. Other than being a little tired, I'm actually doing very well. Thank you. You, Elizabeth, are going through you just finished really, you just put your application in to become CEM from the International Association of Emergency Managers. So I congratulate you on that.
Thank
But you've deliberately gone through the process to become a great emergency manager, to learn emergency management and to be able to apply it in what it is that you do. But before we get into that, let's talk about who you are, and could you just give everybody understanding and talk about who is Elizabeth Weeks?
Gosh, who is Elizabeth Weeks? My name is Elizabeth. My friends call me E. Everybody else can too. That's my LinkedIn signature, at least E Weeks. My history in emergency management is pretty short. I've been in emergency management for about 4.5 years. I came from a background of education, event management, and I was an EMT as well before I became an emergency manager. I was working in nonprofit event management for quite a long time, as well as the education space, mostly in like lower grade elementary education. And I entered into emergency management kind of on a whim. I was working at our local hospital in Mammoth Lakes as a clinical assistant in the women's health clinic. And it was a good job. I learned a lot about how the hospital operated. I hadn't worked in healthcare prior to that. And a job opening came up for this emergency preparedness coordinator for our hospital, which was really a part-time role with an EMT shift as part of that in the emergency department. And it's funny because I reviewed the job description and moved past it. I read it. I thought, oh, that might be interesting. But at the time, I didn't really have a focus on emergency management. It was actually my husband who sent it to me again a couple days later and said, hey, I think you might be really good at this. And the reason he had said that was because ultimately the job description really talked a lot about managing groups, managing events, and also had this training skill set background as well as being an EMT. And I reviewed it again and I realized that so much of my skill sets leading up to my role in emergency management really highlighted a lot of the areas that I work in now in emergency management. Is I do a lot of training and education, and obviously emergency management, as I tell people, is like event management for disasters is ultimately what it is. I applied for that and I got that job and it was really great, and it's been a really amazing learning experience, but a lot of stuff to learn in 4.5 years. I had no prior knowledge of what it meant to be an emergency manager or an emergency preparedness coordinator specifically before I had that job. And so I've really just spent the last 4.5 years just absorbing as much information as possible and understanding how emergency management concepts apply specifically to rural healthcare. I work at a critical access hospital and we live in Central California. It's very limited resources. There's a lot of turnover, that kind of thing. But it's been a really great experience and I've really enjoyed emergency management and particularly honing my skills as an educator trainer in emergency management for our administrative team. So it's been great. And then ultimately, as I became more engaged in the community as part of my role, I realized, oh, okay, I think I definitely am interested in becoming certified in this area so that I can further refine my skill sets, be of greater service ultimately to my community as an emergency preparedness coordinator, and just really refine my abilities and my skills in this area.
That's awesome. And your background, I think, equips you to be a great emergency manager having to deal with children. You have to really understand, even when you're working with adults mainly in a hospital setting or in emergency management, sometimes you have to talk to them like children. You have to be very simplified in your speech, simplified in your directions of what you want them to do. And your writing has to be very, almost elementary in how it's written so that it can be read and acted upon quickly. So I think, and then your background in events management as well. There's a lot of events in emergency management, and it's not necessarily always disaster.
Right.
There's preparedness fairs, there's training events, there's conferences, there's so many other things that you could be doing, teaching events that you could be utilizing those skills. And it's another, I think, line of specialties and skills that could be applied to the emergency management space that aren't necessarily normally looked upon in that way. Let's talk about how that's your background and having those skills in not necessarily emergency management, but how has it helped you in applying emergency management and what it is that you do today, and how it has helped you to excel in becoming an educated emergency manager?
Okay. I think my background in elementary education, just on that specific topic, I just took a PIO basics course this year, and I learned, and this is probably something that a lot of people know, but I learned that on average, when people are receiving information via social media or some sort of public announcement, that the average reading age nationally is like third grade level, which was surprising to me. I think just in general, I didn't know that. And it's funny because even as a person who puts together plans or writes reports, I like colorful things, and you do get a lot of feedback when you do training and education events that the language of emergency management can be a little like above your head because it's a specific jargon for that particular area. And I definitely think that having a background in education, especially for like young kids, has helped me really understand that when I'm going through training and education with the population of the hospital, regardless of the intelligence of everybody, we do need to use language that's more universal, that's more understood and less jargony. So I definitely am using those skill sets there. And in event management, I think when you work in event management, you manage so many areas all at once. It's a really a living, breathing event. When you do event management, a lot of things happen in the moment. And so I think my skill sets in that area have really lent a good, how do I want to say this? Just like an ability for myself to understand that there's so many moving parts to an incident from before it even happens to after it occurs. There's so many pieces. And so you have to look at it from a year out. How all, when you create an event or put an event on, you're looking at it from a year before it happens and what things do we need to set in place to make sure that we're ready to go during the day, and then considering what might happen within that moment as well. And then you're also, in the background of education and event management, you're dealing with a ton of personalities, a variety of types of human beings and cultures or perspectives. And I think I have a great understanding that we're not all the same. We all come from different places, different experiences. And so that's lent to my ability to engage on a deeper level with stakeholders, for example, inside and outside of the hospital.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think, yeah, and it is true. And a lot of people don't understand that too, that most people, and it's not necessarily they they do read at a third grade to sixth grade level, but it's not necessarily an intelligence thing. It could be a time thing. It could be a preference thing. It could be,
Right.
it's one of those things, like the simpler it is. And when I do things I have to do, there's times when and I do multiples, and everybody should be doing this. And I think most people do, as you probably, when you like put something together, you may put together a proposal, then you put together a flyer, then you can put together an image, and everybody will respond to one of those things exactly the same. Like someone will read that entire proposal and be like, okay, I get it. Some people will be able to look at that image and be like, I get it. Some people will be able to look at the flyer and be like, I'm good. Other people, it has to be told to them. So how you do the things, you got to, the one piece, I look at this in marketing is one piece of content and then you split that content up and how most people are going to take that content in, whether it be an image or whether it be a video, whether it be a flyer, or whether it's going to be an article, right? So I think you got to accommodate to all those different personalities, because you have those, especially in the emergency management space. But then when you're planning it so far out, but when it happens like right then, you got to know who you're talking to, who. It's definitely a great skill set to have. And go back to what I said at the beginning. You just put in your application for your CEM. So you're waiting to hear back on that, which is in itself is a rough process. Just bringing all the stuff together, getting everything done, submitting it. It's a process. It's a pretty intensive process. Now, what are you thinking? Like, how is this going to affect you in your future of an emergency management and applying it and how you do things, not only having the CEM and getting your CEM, but in how you move forward in being a better emergency manager every day?
I think that having a CEM as part of my career in emergency management, I think first and foremost demonstrates to other organizations who are looking for emergency managers that I've put in the time and effort to really understand the concepts, the subject matter, that I'm committed to future education, which I am. I think having a CEM2 really, for me personally, shifts my perspective as well on what I'm capable of. So I think that's first and foremost. I think in the future, what I am looking to do, and something that was really beneficial to me initially, was to be some sort of consultant or mentor to new disaster managers like myself. When I was hired within my position, having again like zero background in emergency management, even though I had a lot of skill sets that applied to those concepts, I was actually hired in tandem with another emergency management consultant from Mount Shasta in California. And she has had a ton of real life experience in the fire service, was working as an emergency manager, and then and ultimately offered me like this support and guidance to understand and navigate emergency management in a way that I think probably would have been somewhat difficult or confusing for me had I done it on my own, or didn't really know or consider maybe looking for somebody to mentor me within my community. Ideally, what I'd like to do moving forward, once I have a certification in emergency management, is become a consultant or a mentor in the same way for other new emergency managers or disaster coordinators in smaller areas that they juggle a lot of roles, maybe need some help navigating regulations and requirements, some of the more important prioritization things in terms of getting the emergency operations plan put together, or even who to communicate with within their community to find the support to carry out completing regulations and things like that. So I'm interested in that. I definitely am embracing some of my educator and trainer identity as part of my CEM process. So I'm looking forward to hitting that milestone and then really putting myself out there to say, hey, like, how can I contribute, service the communities like mine in other areas, and help be like a supporting, guiding mentor for new disaster coordinators.
That's awesome, because you don't hear a lot of people say that's their desire to do that, which is amazing. Everybody needs mentors, everybody needs guidance, everybody to put yourself in a position where you're going to intentionally be looking for those people that need that guidance. That's amazing. So I
Thank
want
you.
to acknowledge you for that. Also, in when it comes to emergency management and your CEM for that matter, as you go on in further advancing, the biggest call is contribution. So it gets to a point where it's less how much you are learning, more about how much you are contributing to the field. So that in itself is an amazing goal. So I'd love to hear that. Myself, I promote that all the time. But it's more for the individual who needs it. Go find it. Go ask somebody
Yeah.
to be your mentor. It's not very often that someone's going to come up and say, "Hey, let me mentor you." It's going to be the other way around. To get asked, "Hey, would you mind guiding me through this or mentoring me through this?" So
Well, and
that's fantastic.
I think that, I think naturally in a small community like the one that I live in, I may have, and I still think that actually, even in this moment, I probably consider my county counterpart as somewhat of a mentor to me. We work together very closely, and I rely on her for guidance in a lot of different areas as well about how we go through exercises and work together as a community. But I don't think, yeah, I don't know that I knew that I needed what I got had the hospital not had that idea really to partner me with this consultant, so that I was boots on the ground emergency manager or emergency preparedness coordinator for the hospital. And then the consultant who had the expertise was somebody who lived, she doesn't live in our community, but her and I were able to connect and make that. And even with yourself going through the CEM process and having somebody to really answer my questions or clarify when I'm feeling confused, maybe even ask the same question a couple times. And I am a person who loves to learn and be educated. And I think also as a consultant, there's an aspect of my continuing education and understanding of emergency management concepts is then implemented through the process of mentorship when working with somebody else. Not to say that I wouldn't be doing those things within the space that I'm already in, but it would be really cool to be able to say, okay, hey, like this just came out when I've learned a lot about this, and then here's what you should look into or guide somebody in a certain direction on how it applies to the community that they live in. So yeah, I'm definitely interested in contributing to my and others' communities through the process of mentorship or consultation.
Amazing. That's an amazing thing. Thank you for letting everybody know that. Real quickly, just wanted to acknowledge that you're going to be one of the speakers at the Theory and Practice Leadership Summit, which is scheduled for May 28th and 29th. Is there anything that you're speaking on at that summit that you'd like the audience to know about?
Yeah, I'll be speaking on this very topic. So I'm currently putting together a tool that I want to provide during that time. But ultimately, what I'd love to do is provide information on why mentorship is such a successful channel for new disaster coordinators, regardless of whether or not they are partnered through their actual employer with somebody or they go out and seek mentorship from somebody within their space that is already embodying what they're looking to do or has expertise in the area of their choosing. So I'll definitely be speaking on mentorship as a successful tool for new disaster coordinators, and then putting together some kind of checklist for new disaster coordinators if they don't have a consultant or a mentor that they can rely on immediately, at least having kind of that initial setup for themselves on how to get organized, where to go first, some of the things to touch on when entering into a new employment space, maybe particularly in the healthcare setting, and really how to set up a great emergency management program that is focused on education, training, and exercise.
Awesome. I look forward to it personally, and I know those who that will be hearing it will be benefited from that. So, where can people, if you get a hold of you, where can people connect with you?
LinkedIn is where I have my main emergency management focus. I think I'm listed on LinkedIn as E Weeks-Comeau, so my full last name with a hyphen in between, E first name, if they're looking for me. Maybe even E Weeks. I'm not sure actually off the top of my head. But yeah, LinkedIn is where they can find me.
All right, I'll make sure I share that link in the show notes. So if you're listeners, if you're driving down the road, don't feel like you're going to miss out. I'll put it in the show notes. So you can come back and you could be able to reach out to Elizabeth. Elizabeth, thank you so much for taking the time and coming and talking to the audience and telling them your journey. I look forward to seeing the second half of this journey as where it goes. Getting your CEM, meeting you at the conference, seeing you go across stage and getting it, and just the emergency manager that you're going to become. That watching and seeing how you've applied what you've done to become the emergency manager you are today to what you're going to be tomorrow is exciting. And when it comes to emergency management, you don't see that too often. The people that come into the field take the time to learn the profession. And that's what we want to see more of. So thank you so much for that. I want to acknowledge you for that and what you do. Thank you for
Thank you.
the time because your time is your most valuable resource. And I appreciate you giving that to me today. We've had to reschedule a few times. So that kind of was doing this with time. And I didn't not necessarily enjoy that, but I appreciate you being patient with me. And for all those who are out there listening and watching right now, thank you so much for taking the time. I will be putting the information in the show notes. So if you're watching it, it is in the show notes. So click on that to connect with Elizabeth. Thank you so much for what you're doing. Thank you for listening to the show. Please subscribe, please comment, please share. That means a lot, and it does definitely helps the show and what we're doing. My name is Dan Scott. Our goal is for us to get better and to get better together.